industry has been sued, right? Has been sued by environmental activists, okay, ranging from, do you have an organization or anything in mind? Just kind of like just grassroots environmentalism? All right, so with that being said, I shall now hear arguments from the pro side, okay? Go ahead.
Well, to start, who here eats fish? Like, so many of us, right? So 23% of all the fish that we eat, almost a quarter of all the fish in the world's fish supplies, including like yellow flounder and sole, all those fish are caught by trawling. There's multiple types of trawling. You know, you can trawl middle layers, we can trawl bottom layers for different species of fish, and they all offer benefits. The most important benefit of fish trawling is that it's more efficient. It allows for a bigger catch of fish, and allows us to feed more people. This is especially important, like not only here in the United States, but also in third world countries where the diet is primarily fish. And large-scale fishing might be one of their only options if you've got an impoverished population base. There's a lot of other benefits to it as well. In addition to being more efficient, trawling has actually been shown to increase fish populations by reducing other competing hard-bodied species such as crabs and mollusks and stuff that leave more prey for other species and allow a rebound. Bottom trawling can also, as it stirs the sediment, also resuspends nutrients in the water column for other fish to use. And the important thing that we should know is that all of fishing, commercial fishing, whether it's trawling or not, is heavily regulated. So that it's not sort of the Wild West out there. You know, we've got, you know, if we're looking at trawling with lines, line amounts and line sizes are regulated by a number of different agencies. You know, even in other countries where, you know, some people think that there might not be as much regulatory oversight, such things as drift nets are limited to certain areas. That allows for fish restocking in other areas where those nets aren't located. And especially now, technology's increased to the point where we have a lot of selective trawling, where we're reducing the amounts of bycatch by you know, having specific types of nets, lines, etc. So I guess if you guys are against that, take it away to your death.
Okay, so those are the bulk of your arguments, right? No other statements. Okay, so all right, let's hear from the other side.
So for trawling, commercial fisheries' main objective is to just increase their catch and overall just their profit. For the majority of what they're catching, it's bycatch. So 90% of what they catch is not what they're targeting. And it's made up of species that end up being in decline in those areas. And because the trawls are so heavily weighted, it drags across the ocean floors and destroys the habitats and the structures and the biochemical compositions of the nutrients that are there and settled. The damage done to the habitat configuration can lead to an ecological shift of the organisms that live in those specific areas. And there's also cruelty to animals that occur. They're killing hundreds of billions of animals worldwide every year through this process, and it's more so than any other industry in the world. These enormous vessels can stay out at sea for as long as 6 months, storing hundreds of tons of fish, and they put them into just large freezers and let them sit there. And oftentimes when they bring the fish on board, if they're still alive, they'll end up having them have painful deaths where they'll either slit their gills and let them bleed out in order to kill them, or they'll throw them right onto the freezers for 15 minutes at a time, and it leads to excruciating pain before they do end up dying. And overall, it ends up decreasing the complexity of the seaboard ecosystems, as well as the size and the biomass of the creatures that live in those areas.
All right, I see that we have some pretty specific points here. And now what we're going to do, I think we'll have another little work period where you guys, hopefully you took down some specific things to respond to, and then that way your side, and let's hear from the back end of the room so you guys are sure you're connecting all this information, right? Rebutting, okay? So we have 5 minutes for each side to work together, and then we'll have a 4-minute rebuttal period for each side, okay? henceforth with. Right? I don't know what they would say in old time courts, but that's what I imagine. I just know night court.
It's Judgment Day.
Yeah. Okay, so, okay, go ahead. Judgment Day, that's right.
Are we doing the thing where it's like?
So you shall be judged. What?
Are we going pick one point and then do that, or do all of them?
This is like a total response, okay? And you can bring up specific points in it that they can use. But then our final one, we're gonna get to ones where we have specific things you're actually referring to, okay? So for this one, it's kind of an overall rebuttal, okay?
Okay, so when you mentioned the fact that it's more efficient due to the new technologies, you mentioned for impoverished countries that it provides food for them, but in terms of Indonesia, that is an impoverished country, and as a whole, 40% of the people there have had a decline in their catch because of the trawling coming in. So you're taking jobs away from people who are already trying to provide for their families and can't afford it, and then you're also taking away their food. Thousands of people have ended up losing their jobs without warning when the trawling comes in. And in terms of like the catch and the bycatch, you might have a specific target, but you're essentially catching everything except for that one target. There's no selectivity in it. So even though you're trying to get perhaps shrimp, you're going to get everything aside from that, such as sea turtles, seabirds, and dolphins end up in those trawling areas. And for tuna, that's a species that is in major extinction and danger of it. And half of the tuna species is now in danger of extinction because of the fact that the trawling is coming in and taking them out. And you also mentioned that the bycatch is now being decreased because of the increase in technology, and yet there's still overfishing occurring. And even though you say it's highly regulated, throughout the entire U.S., over 25% of the stocks are being overfished. So it's reducing, that's just the U.S. alone, not to mention the entire world. So if you're highly regulated, why is it that overfishing is occurring? And the bottom trawling, as you mentioned, for one of the methods, it captured over 800 million pounds of marine life each year, and 90% of the large fish populations have been exterminated over the past 50 years because of that occurring.
Okay. So saith you, okay? So we have a few moments for you to rebut, okay? And then we'll take down specific points, and then you respond to like things that you think were actually false. Okay, so you guys have a chance now to overall respond. Okay, go ahead. This is the pro side.
So you talked about overfishing.
Wait, come forward. Let's come to the stand. This is a formal situation in court. I should be wearing my robe.
Alright, so you guys mentioned that we're reducing the fish populations, but fish reproduction is actually really fast. If you compare it to like hunting, deer can only reproduce, say, like 2 fawns per season, but a fish can lay hundreds of eggs at a time. So their reproduction is actually fast, and they can reproduce their population. Regulations make it so that trawling is only allowed in an area for a certain amount of time, and then those fishers have to move to a new location to let that population regrow. So we're really not like overfishing any certain areas because we keep having to move. In the grocery stores, you'll notice that there's signs saying where the fish came from, so that you know where it came from, and then those places have to stop fishing in that location for a while and move somewhere else. And then the catch can be up to 90% of unwanted fish, like you said, but that's up to 90%. That's not always 90%. And if there is a catch that comes up 90% unwanted fish, we would throw it back, because unwanted fish is not profitable. We want what we're fishing for because that's what we're getting paid for. So it's not what we want either. So we take care of it and throw them back. 16% of animal protein intake from humans is all fish. And while beef is huge for a lot of people, it's 7 times less effective than fish trawling. Cattle take up a lot more resources course, is a lot more money for one single cow, whereas trawling, it's just a net sweep and you have food to feed thousands of people. Selective trawling is using different size nets. So if we're looking for smaller fish, we will use a smaller net. But if we're looking for the bigger fish, the holes in the net are big enough to let all those little fish go that we aren't looking for. And
Okay. Do you have enough to gather up some facts now? Because I heard some definite things in there that are, and I just want to clarify one point. Beef is 7 times less effective at sort of delivering protein. You mean like the trophic effect?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about? Okay, so we might clarify that. Basically, what you're saying is the drain on kind of the Earth's resources is less when you do this than if you grow a cow. Is that what you're saying? Okay, because the energy transfer is less because it's so direct. Is that what you're saying? It is direct. Okay, so it's a direct manipulation, right? Or, right? Ingestion of protein. Okay, so any other points to clarify? You guys okay with some points? You ready to respond? Okay, so now we'll have another like 3 minutes to kind of get your points together on things that you heard that you really disagree with or that you think you can really knock down. So now we're gonna be very, very specific, okay? And then what we'll do is we'll just have from the floor, we'll have response, okay? So I'll do one side and then the other. And then I will deliver my verdict, okay?
You mentioned your locations, and even in doing so, if you didn't trawl in the first place, you wouldn't have to relocate to allow those like fish populations to bounce back. And then, even though regulation is taking place, it's still not doing enough. Like, if trawling is out there and the crew is getting as much profit as they can, and there's still catch to be taken in, there's no one on the boat to tell them, like, you need to move on. So they can just be out there as long as they can until someone finds that they're overfishing. And even though you say that like the fish do reproduce quickly, another point is that some of those fish have long gestational periods, so even though some might be able to reproduce very quickly, others might even lay their eggs in the sediment. So you're also, through bottom trawling, like, disrupting all of that sediment and killing the eggs before they even have the chance to grow and become part of a new population. And with the netting size, it can be large or small, but the dominant species caught within that is still bycatch. So you're still getting animals in there that are not your targeted animals. And also, when you mentioned that the fish that are unwanted and how they're thrown back, most of the time those fish and animals are killed through the fact that they're being dragged through obstacles within the water column, or they're being dragged on the bottom of the ground. So oftentimes they're dead by the time they are thrown back in, so it doesn't really help the population much when those dead animals are placed back into the water.
Okay. Okay. What say you?
Well, let's see. So basically, with the increasing technology in, the fields of fishing as they have started in 1950, continuing on from what I have found in research, that with farmers' carelessness, granted, everyone knows that there is pollution going into the ocean, which creates dead zones, which actually, if you think about it, trees, rainforests, it's the lungs of the world, which actually, affects the oceans. With everything being put into the oceans, actually creates bacteria, and everything that settles sediment right on the bottom creates green bacteria. Green bacteria creates more carbon dioxide, which therefore is creating dead zones, which is uninhabitable for any sort of species anywhere. There's about 400 dead zones throughout the globe. As you can see in this picture right here, the majority of them are in the English Channel, because it's London. It's London. What they're trying to do, this is a map of all of the dead zones. This is a map of where they're trying to focus majority of fish netting. If you can tell, granted a lot of this is coastal, but they're trying to use their new technology, to use the nets to actually stir up all of the bacteria and get it into the oceanic, what did I say? Currents, thank you. To spread everything throughout the ocean. That way everything can become more inhabitable for the fish. And at the same time, they do have scientists working with the fishermen to try to save said species from becoming extinct within these dead zones of carelessness of other people. The fishermen have really nothing to do with carelessness of people, say farmers or whoever on land, but they're doing the best they can to actually use what they have at the time to save, even save species of fish by using fish nets.
Okay. Okay, that's a good point, interesting point. So now what we can do is anybody out there, okay, so again, if you hear something that you can respond to now using facts that you've got right in front of you, go ahead. So Darcy has something. So what we're going to do is side to side, okay, so we're going to do one and then one and then one until we reach some kind of a decision here, okay. So because they were the last to speak, this side can then respond.
So with the dead zone and like all the impurities that end up in there from pollution, there are actually fish and plants and coral reefs that have natural abilities to filter things out. So you're just disrupting the natural tendencies of those animals and plants within the environment already. So they can already take care of that. You're getting involved with things that you don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
And taking those animals and disrupting those ecosystems, is that like the whole reason you're doing that now is because you've already destroyed those things that could naturally do it?
Response? Anybody?
I'm gonna go ahead and say no. Well, basically with the dead zones, they've noticed that dead zones are getting very larger, and that yes, species can evolve. However, with the dead zones, if we just leave them be, it's going to destroy, the ecosystems regardless. If we try to at least spread everything out, not just by disturbing their ecosystems, by using the nets, we're trying to spread out everything so that they don't have to work as hard. They don't have to try to survive within those dead zones because of that bacteria. Granted, not all bacteria is bad, but it creates such a bad carbon dioxide, as you can tell, so much being in London. London having the smog issues, blah blah blah. That's also because of the dead zones. We're not only trying to help the fish, we're trying to help ourselves as well because it's creating so much CO2 to the point where it's becoming hard to breathe. It's creating smog. It's creating bad ecosystems, not only for the the animals within like the English Channel, but for us as well. We're trying to help ourselves. We're trying to feed our families. We're trying to get in the global fish market. We're trying to keep the oceans clean as much as we can without stupid farmers being idiots.
I have another one.
Uh-oh, we got another.
So
Okay.
why not just stop the pollution instead of cleaning it up? Why don't you just put an end right to the beginning?
Because that is off topic.
So you're saying
Yeah,
but
this-
you're also you're saying this is destroying the ecosystems. Your trawling is destroying ecosystems.
If
You knowingly
I
know
could point
that.
that out, these dead zones are actually caused. This is a lot. This stuff is caused by nutrient runoff, right? So nutrient runoff from a lot of land-based agriculture and livestock farming, which is what you're proposing, is what's actually creating a lot of these dead
But we're
zones.
talking about trawling. We're not talking about agriculture.
Right, and which is
land
why we're
farming.
saying the trawling, we're trying to do what we can to fix our own mistakes by using what we have and staying on the topic.
Ah. So, do you respond? Any response? Go ahead.
I don't have anything. I just don't get what we're talking about here. I thought we were talking about fish and water. And now
we
we're
are,
talking
we
about
are.
London
They were-
and trees. Like, I'm not following.
They were bringing up the point that farmers and runoff are actually more responsible for the dead zones around the world, rather than
Dead zones
fisheries.
result in basically,
That's the argument is here.
the argument is about pros and cons of fish netting. We're trying to use fish netting not only for the benefit of us being able to get the nutrients from the fish. You said it was 90% of the protein, right?
16%.
16. I'm glad that
Rounded up.
correction. But we're not only trying to use fish netting for that. We're trying to use fish netting for other things, such as the dead zones. That way, we can have fish. We can have healthier fish.
He's pointing out that's a benefit
It's
to industrial fishing.
We're trying to use fish netting not only for fishing.
To
We're trying to use
remediate
it to
dead
solve
zones.
other problems as well, as opposed to coming up with different ideas.
Okay?
Because we're trying to use what we have in hand.
This is an industry point of view. He's just presenting the point of view of the industries that they found. So that's actually a really interesting point because I never would have thought of that. They're saying they're stirring up all these dead zones and they're actually making them better for all creatures to live. In addition to taking all the fish away, but that's just
Granted,
part of it.
At the same time, as technology does expand, it's not like they're not thinking about how to use better technology for, say, nets. If they want to go out and they want to fish for a certain kind of fish, they specifically design nets for that size of fish for that type of fish, like the species, so that way, if you do catch, say, like, you know, you're fishing for a certain kind of fish, another kind of fish gets in there, they can still have room to get out. Like,
Okay, so Marwa has something, and
I
then
just
Emily.
wanted to clarify the point earlier when everybody was confused about how the dead zone, like, you guys know how forest fire actually helps the forest, right? By turning the soil and burning up, you know, the top layer of leaves and whatnot. So in that way, trawls that dig up, it's kind of like when you, like, so
Like
the land-
recycling
yeah.
nutrients in a way. They're saying it's like a really large scale recycler of nutrients
it's
essentially.
not, so that's how it has to do with that. So I feel like a lot of people aren't making the
Yeah.
connection.
I think we're good. Does that make more sense to you? And so Emily, what were you gonna say?
Oh, shoot.
Yeah?
I feel like you guys have this like little fantasy that because you're using this type of netting to catch one fish, that it's like a big magnet and just that specific fish is gonna go to the net. But even if you have a certain net for like a bigger fish that has bigger holes, the small fish are gonna get caught up in those big fish that are stuck in that big net. And by the time they even make it to the side of the net, they're either dead or they're dying, and then you're just like trailing pollution along as you go down the sea.
It's not their goal though. That's
But
the
that's
Yeah, but it's
happening.
happening.
But therein lies the problem. How do you regulate your bycatch? How do they?
There's no economic incentive for the fishing industry to have tons of bycatch. Like, if you can't sell dead dolphins, then there's no point in you catching dolphins. So, like, there's no economic.
Well, they do.
But there's no economic incentive
So
to
you
do
just have
that.
that let them go to water.
No, I'm saying
This is where it gets good. This is where it gets good. Let's let Megan say something and then Josh. Megan.
So it is actually economically beneficial to keep those big species that you're catching, like the turtles and the dolphins that get caught up and they get killed. Because, for example, in Belize, the majority of their tourism comes from marine and activities and stuff like that. So they bring in thousands of hundreds of millions of dollars with that kind of tourism. And people pay on average like $60 more to see healthy coral reefs and marine animals like turtles and sharks. So it would be better for the economy to have people come and spend money at your country if you guys use healthy animals and organisms. And
Okay, so you're saying rather than reducing the biodiversity through trawling, it'd be better to have the animals intact. Let's let Josh respond because he had something. Yeah.
Like Corey was saying, like we're improving the technology. We're even improving the technology of tracking like certain patterns of certain fish to minimize us accidentally catching other types of fish or unwanted fish.
Okay.
So it's
that's
not like
good to
we're
know.
going in and we're like, oh, there's like 50 dead dolphins. Like, oh, that's the
you're
way
saying-
the business. We're finding other ways to like we can avoid. All right, let's try to catch like flounder fish and stay away from the dolphin patterns over here.
Okay, so you're saying there are better ways in place. We don't know what they are, but
It's tracking technology. Like you can track like breeding like if you want Cynthia's catch, like they monitor tracking patterns of like
really, do that really well. That's
crabs on
crazy.
the bottom of the ocean
Crazy,
floor.
crazy. Okay, so Marwa, you guys are all on the pro side, so go ahead. You guys jump in. What do you have to share here?
Okay,
You obviously want to clarify points.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so you guys are basically like either trawling or no trawling, and you're saying that will help the environment, but what about the people who eat the fish? Like the end game is that if we leave these fish to go and breed and they will overpopulate themselves. So, and the end game is that, okay, so say we're never gonna do trawling again, how are you gonna feed all those people who rely on this food?
Two other people to support that. Go. So wait, Eric, you're against it. So yeah. So
Well, I mean,
you're on that same side.
Yeah.
Darcy's against it. So.
well, I mean, just going off that same point, it's exactly what I was trying to get at was that earlier you said in your rebuttal, if we didn't trawl in the first place, it's kind of a necessity, and you have to monitor, which we're trying to do, and we're trying to fix it. And if you just say stop trawling altogether, well then where are we getting our food source? Well, now we're all the way back on land, and now we're targeting all the land animals. So it's a balance of how we're using our resources. So you have to spread out the use of resources than targeting just like land animals or sea animals.
Go ahead, Darcy. What do you have to say?
So rather than having big fishing companies do this and like target all the fish, you can have local fisheries like generate like income for their local communities. And in areas where people rely on fish, such as the impoverished countries, that's primarily what their diet is. But you're taking away jobs from those people. Like like I mentioned, Indonesia, those people rely on like fishing, like local fishing to provide for their families. But in a sense, you're taking it over and making them rely on you, therefore fueling your need to be in their areas when they could have done it themselves and like provided more for themselves.
Why?
deep sea fishing, not local, I'm on your
But
territory.
Billy Joel would say
Going
that.
throughout.
Trawlers put all those Gloucester fishermen out of business. Like,
Those trawling things are out on the seas for 6 months out of the year. So they're going through all those areas. They're still catching other things because fish are trying to get out of the way in those paths. So they're still following through and picking up everything in the path.
Which is why they're improving on everything and trying to do much better than what they were back when it started in the 1950s.
But you're still catching all these fish that you don't need and taking away jobs from people.
So suggest another method.
Another method,
What's
let
the
the
better
local
alternative?
fishing companies do it and be
How do you
like
feed
inland.
millions of people?
We stop eating fish.
Well, there's other
Come back on
alternatives.
fish.
So you can still.
Now remember-
stop in massive. You can still fish, but you don't need to have these massive things going through the oceans and destructing.
You should be a lawyer, John.
Can't feed millions of people.
Local impoverished countries don't have millions and millions of people. It's the small places that
Alright.
need it and rely on it.
Let's put this on your plate then. What would you rather do?
That's what she told me.
Regulate
been
things
saying.
better. That's what
Which is what I'm
I-
trying to do.
Like I lived in Gloucester, so I know that there are local fishermen that did. So and my whole family lived there, so I know for a fact that local fishing places provide and is made in those local restaurants and sold in those
But
stores.
millions of people are,
You're wrong. You're wrong.
All in good fun, all in fun. You guys, now that's actually really good because what we're just about to get into, and we don't have time, of course, to turn the corner into, is how complicated it's going to get when you come back on the environment to land and you deal with where the resources are actually being depleted. They're being depleted everywhere, so you're right to bring up that point. It's a very, very difficult issue, particularly when you think of, like, you knew the Downeaster Alexa, right? That song? Totally, because I mean, it's not even, it's people are being put out of business, right, all over the place. These industries are taking control, and yes, they try and regulate, but it's the scale of things I think we agree it's difficult, right?
see, I'm just trying to think like, debate is
That was good, you guys.
pro or
That was good.
con.
Wait, who won?
So if you know-
Who won? I want to get who won on.
Well, she's biased.
Let me see, I'm biased. Hold on, let me see. Who do I think won this one?
Yeah, Darcy, that concluding argument,
You know,
didn't really do anything.
you're wrong. You're wrong.
So being that shows that I just want to know if you do stop doing debate, that's.
Exactly, I think you're right, though. Number
Are you
of
gonna have
meetings
thousands
is
of
already on
folks
it.
taking off their fishing boat?
Exactly, I don't think you can't do it. So then you get back into population. That's what our demand.
Things that means like, once they
Another and another, and you can't put yourself out of it. You can't.
focus on.
No, you can't. And that's why, I mean, again, it's an endless regression, but we're just doing it for fun to raise awareness.
I don't know, it's just, you gotta regulate which is what we're doing.
I know.
So you don't wanna use the nets, that's cool. Do you wanna use thousands of folks?
I know. Well, you know, those nets are basically done.
Yeah, but that's.
Again, the increase in the technology is kind of
I
like.
know what you're saying. You did a great job to point out the
I'll bring
complexity.
in pictures my mom has. Mom
Who won?
Really, it's so sad. It's really, Gloucester's become a ghost town because
Rockport especially, 'cause they live like right on the coast.
it's awful, and all those people not trained to do anything else. What do they do?
And all the prices go up because that's what they rely on.
Exactly. I totally hear you. I didn't know it was such a issue close to home. That's interesting.
Well, this summer, he's an employee for a while, but he got a job because they live in Gloucester.
Really, you knew that song? I know. Those who didn't know my songs are.
We actually don't use nets.
Right?
Who won?
I don't know who won that. Who won that?
Did we
I don't know.
We did. Hello, we did.
I feel like it's,
I think you had to come up with some really creative stuff, and you did. So it was a good job.
but
And there's